On June 22, 1940, for exactly 3 years to the day after Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, something unprecedented happened on the Eastern Front. An entire German army group did not retreat. It did not regroup. It did not surrender in large numbers. It vanished in just 23 days. The Soviet Red Army destroyed Army Group Center, the backbone of Germany's eastern defenses. More than 500,000 German soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. Entire divisions ceased to exist. Maps became meaningless. Command structures collapsed. Hitler's most trusted generals lost control of the war in the east. Forever. This was Operation Bagration, the most devastating offensive in modern military history, and one of the least understood. This is how the Red Army didn't just defeat the Wehrmacht, but erased it. Section 1. The German Illusion. Spring 1944. By early 1944, Germany believed the Eastern Front had stabilized. The Red Army had pushed west after Stalingrad and Kursk, but Army Group Center stretching across Belarus still held firm. Its defensive lines were deep, layered, and anchored to forests, rivers, and swamps. German intelligence believed this terrain made large-scale Soviet offensives impossible. They were wrong. Hitler believed the Soviets would strike south, toward Romania's oil fields, or north, toward the Baltics. Army Group Center was considered safe safe that its reserves were stripped away and sent elsewhere. By June, Army Group Center was dangerously exposed. 800 miles of front, minimal armored reserves units, understrength and exhausted static defenses, designed for a war that no longer existed. The Red Army was preparing something far bigger than Germany could imagine. Section 2. The Soviet DECAP. Bagration was not just an attack, it was a masterpiece of deception. Soviet planners created false radio traffic, dummy tank formations, and staged troop movements in Ukraine, convincing German intelligence the main blow would fall in the south. Meanwhile, over 2.3 million Soviet soldiers, 6,000 tanks, 30,000 artillery pieces, and 5,300 aircraft quietly assembled opposite Army Group Center. German reconnaissance aircraft saw almost nothing. Forests hid tanks. Rail lines moved only at night. Units marched under camouflage nets. By the time Germany realized what was happening, it was already too late. Section 3. June 22, 1944. The sky breaks open at dawn on June 22. The earth itself seemed to tear apart. A Soviet artillery barrage, unlike anything seen before, erupted across the German lines. For hours, shells slammed into bunkers, trenches, and command posts. Entire regiments were buried alive. Then came the aircraft. Soviet Il-2 attacked at treetop level, ripping through German columns and artillery positions. Communications lines were severed. Radios went silent. German officers tried to report the situation. There was no one left to answer. Within hours, frontline German divisions were shattered. Survivors stumbled back through smoke and fire, only to find Soviet tanks already behind them. The front did not bend, it collapsed. Section 4. The pockets of DHR. By June 24, massive encirclements Kessels had formed at Vitebsk. At Mogilev's higher German corps were trapped. Hitler issued his usual orders: hold at all costs. No retreat, no breakout. The Red Army tightened the rings. Inside the pockets, ammunition ran out. Food vanished. Wounded soldiers lay untreated. Soviet loudspeakers offered surrender. Many German units never even received the order, because their commanders were already dead. At Bobruisk alone, over 70,000 German soldiers were annihilated. Some surrendered. Most did not survive. Section 5. Minsk. The Army Group DIS. By early July, the Soviet spearheads converged on Minsk, headquarters of Army Group Center. German commanders begged for permission to withdraw. Hitler refused. On July 3, Minsk fell. Over 100,000 German soldiers were trapped east of the city. This was not a battle, it was a liquidation. Soviet units advanced methodically, reducing the pocket kilometer by kilometer. Prisoners were marched east in endless columns. Those too wounded to walk were left behind. Army Group Center no longer existed. It had not retreated. It had not escaped. It had ceased to be. Section 6. Why the Germans could not escape this. Destruction wasn't luck. It was systemic. German doctrine depended on mobility, reserves, and initiative, none of which remained in 1944. Soviet forces now outnumbered Germans. 10-1 in key sectors, controlled the air, completely coordinated infantry, armor, artillery, and aircraft seamlessly. German units, moved by Soviet aircraft, destroyed them. They moved by night. Soviet infantry blocked them. They dug in artillery, crushed them. There was no safe direction. There was no rear. Section 7. The human COS. By July 15th, the numbers were catastrophic. Approximately 180 Germans killed, approximately 250,000 captured, tens of thousands wounded or missing, entire divisions vanished from German records. Families received no death notices, no POW lists, just silence. For the Soviet Union, the victory was enormous, but not cheap. Red Army casualties exceeded 750,000, including over 180,000 killed. Operation Bagration was not a clean triumph. It was a meat grinder. Section 8. The strategic EARTHQAK. Operation Bagration destroyed Germany's ability to defend the East. After July 1944, the Red Army stood at the gates of Poland. Germany had no strategic reserves. The Eastern Front would never stabilize again. 6 months later, Soviet troops would be fighting in Berlin. Meanwhile, the Western Allies were still fighting through Normandy, completely unaware that the largest German defeat in history was unfolding simultaneously in the East. Section 9. Why you rarely hear about it. Operation Bagration is rarely discussed in Western history. Why? Because it occurred far from Western reporters. Soviet records were classified for decades. Cold War politics minimized Red Army achievements, yet, in pure scale, it dwarfs D-Day. More German losses, more territory gained, more strategic impact. This was the moment. Nazi Germany lost the war beyond recovery. Conclusion: the Vienna siege in 23 days. The Red Army did what Napoleon failed to do, what the Kaiser failed to do, and what Hitler believed impossible. They erased an army. Not symbolically, not metaphorically. Literally. Maps were redrawn. Commanders disappeared, and the road to Berlin lay open. Operation Bagration was not just a battle, it was annihilation. And once it began, there was no stopping it.